the understanding of precession, which couldn't have any less significance to this event, no matter how well that they understood it. So let's take a look at what supposedly got this whole thing started, the Mayan calendar. The first question is, did the Mayan long count calendar predict the end of the world? No. There is no reference to this concept in Mayan culture. These ideas about the Mayan calendar are imposed by us, and not by the Mayans. Again, quoting John Major Jenkins, he says, "I do not concur with the Neo-Atlantean pole shift cataclysmologists on the idea that the world will literally end in 2012. With this distinction in mind, I admit that I still occasionally write as a shorthand note, end date, or end date in 2012. This does not mean that I believe the Mayan calendar or the world will end in AD 2012. Often when you listen or read or watch a presentation on 2012, they will make the jump from the resetting of the calendar to it must mean that the major cataclysms are coming in a very slick way, usually not dwelling on this important transition. Those that do mention it usually cite one of the following reasons to tie it together. Number one, that a Mayan ballgame was actually symbolism that told us about galactic alignment, and number two, that certain pictorials of the sacred tree also speak of galactic alignment. While I don't agree with the logic used to make these connections and think that they are far-fetched, and in some cases frivolous, for the sake of argument, I will say that the Mayans did for whatever reason choose to end their calendar on this 2012 solstice because of the visual effect of the sun rising in galactic center on that date, and that they fully knew of this effect. But even then, this would only be of local, religious, or mathematical significance. That is to say, if the Mayans believed it was a symbol of rebirth when the sun appeared in the Milky Way Galaxy, it would be their prerogative. But it wouldn't have any galactic importance. There is also this idea that the Mayans were able to miraculously determine these events, but it should be noted that Western society discovered the precession of the equinoxes at least 100 years before the first Mayan calendar was ever made, so it wasn't exactly a new concept. The calculations to determine these events are not magical, but a matter of mathematics and astronomical observations. The Mayan culture stayed stable for centuries, so it's entirely possible for an astronomer to plot the position of some stars at midnight at the equinox, and his grandson to plot the same stars 72 years later, and realize that the stars had all shifted 1 degree in that time. Multiply by 360 and you get the precession cycle of 26,000 years. Almost certainly this is how they did it, because that's all it takes. So, were the Mayans predicting the end of the world? Definitely not. In fact, the entire reason, as far as I can tell, for this hype is that the Mayans restart their calendar, much like we do on December 31st. But they did it on a solstice, which they had the mathematical skill to do fairly easily. We are the ones responsible for this 2012 fever. We have put a lot of words in the Mayans' mouths. We have thrown pole shifts and Planet X and solar flares and everything else into the mix, all of which have no connection and not only weren't suggested by the Mayans, but it would be impossible to predict any of those things using any of the methods we are told that they used to make such predictions. Not to mention that we have been told untruths about things like our solar system aligning with galactic center, which it did 3 million years ago, and we won't be returning for another 30 million years. I think there could be many reasons why this idea is so actively being promoted to the world. I encourage you to draw your own conclusions. However, while doing the research on this, I finally found out why I think it's being done. The following is my personal view, and it may be extreme, and if you don't agree with it, I encourage you not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because the 2012 theories are still wrong, no matter what. If you don't want to hear my analysis, feel free to shut off the video at this point. Many 2012 researchers are quick to point out how things will be getting much worse upon the approach to 2012, and we will see many cataclysms and earth changes on the way to our promised enlightenment. I think that this has to be promoted as much as possible to people so that when they see these kinds of things happening in the next few years, which I agree will happen, but for different reasons, everyone will try to endure these things, thinking it's a natural cycle, never realizing the obvious fact, which is that the Bible clearly prophesied what the days before the return of Jesus and the so-called birth pangs would look like, and even why they were happening, and what to do about it. This 2012 thing is both the proverbial carrot on the string, which keeps us looking for our illumination, while simultaneously gives us the pride that we know that all these terrible things are a result of science. Thus, there is no reason to pay attention to any of that. I hear a lot of criticisms of the Bible. I'm not too impressed with most of them. But surprisingly, the one that could really have an impact is never used, even by the fiercest critics, which is challenging the fact that the Bible has never missed in regards to prophecy. That is, that it is 100% accurate. And the Bible itself is full of prophecies. Almost 25% of the Bible is prophecy at the time that it was written. And because of the Septuagint, it can be demonstrated easily that it was written before the events it prophesied happened. And these aren't vague Nostradamus-type prophecies either. They are talking about specific kingdoms and people and places and wars and times and even names, all of which came 100% true. And I think sometimes we don't remember that for about 1,200 of the past 2,000 years, it was completely illegal to own a Bible. It was punishable by death. So I think sometimes we take for granted this book, and considering its track record, it should be the most important book on our bookshelf. Thank you for your time.